Good morning, friends. Hey, Lou, good morning.
Good morning. How are we doing today?
Good, good. Welcome back, everybody. I hope you've had a restful week since we last met, and I hope you're ready for some more of this Gita. Today, we're going to be talking about verse 16 and 17 in chapter 5. And I just want to give you a little bit of my own personal experience in medical school. So in verse 16, what it says is that in a person in whom ignorance or wrong knowledge is destroyed by knowledge, in that person, knowledge reveals the Atman like the sun.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about what all this means. But just put that aside a second, and let's go to my first year of medical school. Now, I was about 19 years old when I joined medical school, and for the first time I saw these textbooks. Anatomy was this big, physiology was this big, microbiology. I had been through some tough schools and college before I got into medical school, but I'd never seen books like this. And when you look further and you say, wow, I have to do this for, and the seniors, when you're just joining medical school, the guys who are ahead of you, like it takes 5 years to finish medical school, who are in seniors or whatever, if you run across them in the cafeteria and they sit and talk to you,
Yep.
they scare you. They say, oh, are you kidding me? The books are going to get worse as you go. And you look down the road and you say, oh, my God, how am I ever going to get through this? Will it ever end? And that's really the point of this story. That then once I took a trip to the United States of America and came here, and I went and saw some people who had been in the medical school and then joined here as interns and residents. And I was agog when I went to see them. I saw this beautiful hospital, all the staff, and these guys walking around in white coats, people who had been at my medical school. And I said, will I ever get here? And for those of you who've read my Memoirs of a Psychiatrist, episodes of hypnosis when I was a resident, I had a very colorful experience during residency and hypnosis and a lot of fun things. So the fun continued. If anything, it got even better after I finished. But my point to you is that I never thought it would come there. And now look at me. I'm so many, 20, 30, 40, 100 years since that first year of medical school.
Yeah.
And I never thought I would get there. Similarly, what this verse is essentially saying is that a person who has wrong knowledge of himself thinks, am I ever going to get there? I'm filled with delusions and anxieties and worries, and I don't know if I can ever get to the point of self-realization. And I don't think that I can promise any of you that you're going to get to self-realization in this age, this life, I mean. Mm-hmm. But you will progress. And what the Gita says is, wherever you progress, the next life you come back and you start off from there. Now, if many of you, if you look back to your childhood or adolescence, did you ever think that you'd be interested in the Gita? But the Gita came into your life and you pursued it and you followed it. You said, I want to learn more about this, which means that there's some inherent drive within you that wants you to learn and get the proper knowledge. You show this to 100 people, maybe one person might say, I want to pursue this. Out of 100, 99 people would probably say, yeah, it's fine, but I really can't understand it, or they're not interested.
Right.
Which means there's something within you, my friend, that shows you that you want to learn more about this. You want to better yourself and you want to improve yourself. So with that as a background, let's talk about wrong knowledge versus knowledge. The Sanskrit word is ajnana. And jnana means knowledge. Ajnana, you would think, means no knowledge because there's an A in front of jnana. But it's not lack of knowledge. It's wrong knowledge. Instead of recognizing yourself as who you really are, the Atman, the Brahman, you recognize yourself as the body, the mind, the intellect, the senses, the I, the small I. I'm doing this. And All of that is seated inside your intellect. All of that wrong knowledge is in your intellect. So the real knowledge has to go into the intellect and push this wrong knowledge out. Now, all religions recognize that you need to get this knowledge to get the wrong knowledge out. And therefore, what most religions, all religions have done is compared it, analogized it to or symbolized it by a light in the form of a candle or a oil lamp. In the Hindu tradition, you continuously have to have an oil lamp or some kind of a lamp next to you wherever you do your prayers. And at the end of the prayers, you put your hands over the fire or flame, and you do this, and you bring it to your eyes. And you basically touch the flame to your eyes like this, and then you rub it over your head, and you pray. Now, what that signifies is you're taking this light or knowledge and letting it go through your eyes into your brain. So it's symbolizing that knowledge goes in through the eyes and, of course, the ears, but into your brain to correct the wrong knowledge that you have. I think in other religions, all religions, you light a candle or you do something with the light, which symbolizes knowledge. So no matter how dark anything is, you go to the bottom of the sea. I think you've probably seen videos by Jacques Cousteau, right?
Sure,
Jacques Cousteau,
yeah.
is that right?
Yes.
And they take these submarines and they go down miles under the ocean, and they show how dark it is before they turn on the light. And you say, I can't see 6 inches in front of my nose if I was down there.
Right.
But yet, when they turn on their massive flashlights, for the first time ever, light has come into that part of the ocean. And it lights up immediately, takes away the darkness. Any darkness, the minute there's even a little bit of light, it starts to disappear. All of you have seen this in early morning when you wake up before the sunrise, way before the sunrise. You see actually the sun starting to rise. There's an orange glow everywhere, and then gradually the sun. This is way before the sun rises. So what that signifies is that before you actually get full knowledge, a lot of knowledge seeps into you and changes you. Very important analogy in the Gita, which talks about mythologically, the sun is described as a sun god. He's sitting in a chariot covered with gold, with a helmet of gold, shining because he's the sun. And his chariot has like 20 horses in front of him, goes way long. And his charioteer, who is way in front of him, is known as Aruna. And Aruna is the dawn. Oh. And the dawn is the charioteer of the sun. I mean, mythologically, symbolically, it makes sense because dawn heralds the arrival of the sun, right, for sunrise, right? So what happens is, before the sun actually even arrives on the scene, the horses and the charioteer appear, and then comes the sun. So before I get up, sometimes at 3:30 in the morning, other times at 4 o'clock in the morning to do studies, and I hope that and suggest that you do that also, because that's the Brahma Muhurta between 4 o'clock and 6 and sunrise, is when you're most calm, your mind is most able to receive knowledge, instead of after sunrise when your mind is all into telephones and emails and text messages and stuff like that. But when I get up, it's pitch dark. And now I'm used to it. I've been doing it for many, many, many years after I learned from Gautam Jain that that's what I need to do. And now when I wake up, I actually enjoy getting up in the morning, making myself a hot cup of tea, sitting down with my books or my studies, and looking out these beautiful windows. You can't see them, or can you? I'll show you.
Yeah, you can see the light, certainly.
You can see the light. So these are the windows. I look out through them.
Yep.
And early in the morning, there's a pink hue. And it's such a pleasure. I know the sun is not up, right, and that signifies that knowledge is starting to seep. That early morning thing is suggesting that knowledge is starting to seep to wash away the wrong knowledge that a person have. So bottom line is that when you get this knowledge, it comes a little bit at a time. It doesn't come all at once. It takes years. But every day there's a little bit of difference. I'm saying this so that those of you who might feel like I felt when I was in first year medical school, oh my God, am I ever going to get through this? I promise you, every day that you study, every episode of this that you listen to, every lecture you listen to, every chapter of the Gita, every verse makes you a little bit better. Your depression, fortunately, I have to say something personal. I haven't experienced many days of depression in my life, or anxiety, or sorrow, or grief, or anything like that. I've been very blessed. I've been fortunate. I do this not because somebody asked me this. Do you do this because you had a bad period in your life? No,
Yeah.
I'm just very interested in it. But there are a lot of people who I've met in my classes who said they started taking up the Gita because they went through some turbulent times in their life. And the Gita promises us that with every little drop of knowledge that you get, that a little bit of your depression, your anxiety, your stress fades away, your tensions fade away. So
The knowledge in this is a little bit different than when we talk about school, because when we talk about school, we talk about a high school diploma, we talk about a college degree, and then you can go out and live your life. But this knowledge is something you do on a day-to-day basis. You're living your life as you go. You're adding a little bit more knowledge to it as you continue to work at it. So you're not working towards one date and a gateway that you can go on and live your life. You're living your life and adding this knowledge.
yeah, what you're talking about is there's two kinds of knowledges. This knowledge is known as a sukshma buddhi. Sukshma buddhi is at a higher level than regular knowledge, which is what we talk about in terms of intelligence.
Right.
And that is like physics, math, chemistry, more off the world, and this is above the world. This is more spiritual, this is more extraterrestrial. That is more terrestrial knowledge, and this is more extraterrestrial.
I see. Yeah.
In a sense.
Yep.
So so does that answer your question? Did you have a question in that?
No, it was more about making the statement of not being discouraged about, I have so much to get through, I have so far to go. It's about, are you further along today than you were yesterday? And you're taking it as you go. You're not going towards a certain gate. You're just living your life and adding knowledge as you go.
Yeah, and I can promise you, just like my friend who was an intern or resident when I came to see him in the United States, promised me that I will get there, and I didn't believe him. I will promise you that every little bit that you reflect and study and take in and imbibe, you will see a difference. You will feel within yourself that you make a difference. And there are ways in which, because one of the characteristic things of students is they come up to their teacher, like we used to go up to Gautam Jain all the time and say, am I improving? Am I changing? Is there a difference being made? And I can promise you that there will come a time where you say, wow, there's a difference in me. And that'll happen.
Oh, yeah.
So you don't know the Atman as yourself. You tend to have doubts, you're misguided, you have worries, anxiety, depression, unhappiness. And as you gain knowledge of yourself and you study, reflect, and contemplate, those are all very important. Your doubts, your worries, your anxieties, your happiness, all the tensions of life leave you. And that's like Aruna, like the dawn, way before self-realization, that you can get. And if you continue this way, your delusions, your misconceptions all clear up, and the Atman suddenly reveals itself, and you are self-realized. You become the Brahman. So that's, I can't even imagine how many lives I have to be born again to get that. Gautam said to me the other day, I was talking to him, I said, I don't know how many thousands of lives I'll have to keep coming back. He said, you never know, it could happen in your next life.
Yep.
So there's some hope in that.
But you're also seeing the light of dawn quite clearly at this point.
Yes,
right?
very clearly, very clearly. And we will one day talk about what you can use as measures to see if you are in fact improving or not. We'll definitely talk about that. So let's talk about, sorry, looking at my notes if I
okay.
covered everything. As you gain knowledge, and you study and you reflect, doubts and worries leave you, and gradually, one day at a time, the knowledge reveals itself. Now, this wrong knowledge, or ajnana, is compared in the scriptures to a dream. And when you wake up, that's compared to being self-realized. And it makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Imagine that you're asleep and you're dreaming that you are a beggar and you're poor and that you have nothing to eat and you're cold and you're lying on the street and people are stepping over you as they walk by you and stuff like that. And you're feeling pretty terrible about your life. And in reality, you're not a beggar. You're able to do all kinds of things. And when you wake up, you say, oh my God, I was so hungry and I was so tired and I was so miserable with my life. I thank God that I'm alive and everything is good. Waking up from that dream is the same thing the scriptures point out to us that you experience when you become self-realized. All of this that you look at right now, and you look at, this is my body, this is my mind, this is my intellect, these are my senses, all of that wrong knowledge goes away, and you realize that it's the Atman and Brahman in everything. Mm-hmm. It is true that there's a body, no question about it. This is real.
Yep.
But it's the Atman presenting as a body. It's the Atman presenting as the mind, as the Brahman. And that's hard to recognize and realize until you wake up. No matter how much you, no matter how much you try and learn this or study this, until you become the Brahman, it's not easy to realize.
Right.
And another analogy that the scriptures make is that when you're ignorant, you see, if you go into a room where somebody has put down a rope and you think of the rope as a snake, you're ignorant. And your ignorance presents the rope as a snake. In fact, you add things to that and you say, oh, I can see the head. Whoa, what a big head. This is a cobra for sure. I can see the eyes.
Yeah.
I can see the fangs. You're making up things. Your mind is imagining things. When you turn on the light, a little dim light, says, it's starting to disappear. No, it doesn't look 100% like a cobra. Maybe it's this. Maybe. And you turn the light all the way, completely bright light. You say, this is a snake. This is a rope. For sure, it's not a snake.
Right.
So with knowledge, with light, just like with light, all these misillusions disappear, misapprehensions disappear. With knowledge, your misperceptions of this world disappear. So that's verse number 16. Verse number 17, those people who gain this knowledge, which pushes out their sins and ignorance, have their mind and intellect fixated on the self and self-realization. That is their constant goal, and they never return to their original state of ignorance, delusion, stress, and strain. So we talked about sin being the mental agitation that is caused by one's actions. You do something, it bothers your conscience, that's sin. This then becomes your vasanas for the next life. Your unfulfilled desires, your vasanas, are your sins from the previous life, in addition to desires that are unfulfilled. A person who acquires these vasanas through many previous lives, as these vasanas together determine his prakriti. We talked about this. If you don't remember, please go back. But the prakriti is the hard drive into which all of your previous lives, wishes, desires, sins go into, and they're carved in there very deeply, and they keep coming back. That prakriti brings those vasanas and desires out in the current life, and will keep going on if you don't get rid of those vasanas in the present life. They will keep showing up in future lives. Vasanas do exist, and they will show up unless you get rid of them. Mm-hmm. And when they show up, they will agitate your mind, which is what causes the agitation, is what causes your delusions, your stress, your strain, your depression, your agitation, your unhappiness with life itself. When through knowledge, and that's the only way, through knowledge, you can get rid of these vasanas, you can get rid of these desires. And when that happens, the agitation of your mind stops, and the cycle of birth stops. So birth and death ceases. important thing for us to recognize is that the scriptures teach us that the reason a human being comes to life in the first place is because he has vasanas. The first time, as we talked, the first time somebody came to life, Brahman said, I'm bored, right? A simplistic explanation. I'm bored. I want something. So Brahman says, I can make myself into a mosquito. I can make myself into an amoeba. I can make myself into a plant. And then Brahman started saying that I'm going to develop from there, like Darwin's theory, and become a human being. Simplistic way of explaining this, but take that and we can take that further. But Brahman has the capability of transforming himself, herself, into different things. I mean, if you've ever seen BBC, the documentary, I forget what it's called, World, or have you seen it, Lou?
I don't think so.
Oh, it's beautiful. I'll send you the link.
Please.
It's all about nature. It's broken into the ocean or the sea, the mountains, the jungles, all kinds of things underneath the sea. And when you see that, if you have a big TV and it's in high definition, it's just gorgeous. And you think to yourself, there has to be a Brahman. Who else could create this? Now, you see some of these birds or animals going through their mating dances where the male is dancing in order to impress the female. And you look at the dance and you look at the colors and you say, it's impossible. How did it get like this? It wasn't born like that. It happened over many, many thousands of years, millions of years that it developed that.
Right.
Just like a giraffe. It wasn't born with a long neck. It came, and environmentalists explained that it needed to have a long neck to get to the trees in the jungle. But how did it get like that? You can explain it to say, well, every generation, every life, it stretched its neck a little bit longer until it got there. But again, that is Brahman that says, I need to come to life as an amoeba and then grow and grow and grow and change until Brahman becomes a human being. And then Brahman decides at that point, I have wishes, I have desires, I want to now go back. But it can't go back until it gets rid of those desires. And what this verse says is a self-realized person or somebody who is wise, who has his mind fixated on self and self-realization, they never return to their original state of ignorance, delusion, stress, and strain. Not in this life and not in future lives either. So that brings us to where this knowledge goes. We talked about the ajnana, the lack of proper knowledge being in the intellect. So there's two ways that people try and get this knowledge into them. One is through the mind. Now the mind, if you remember, we talked, is all about emotion. Desires are in the mind, emotions are in the mind. And so yes, you could meet somebody who's a religious leader and you just say, I blindly accept what he is saying without understanding it, no logic. That's if you accept whatever the guru says as faith. That's a belief.
Yes.
That belief gives rise to superstitions and fanaticism because you don't know what you're believing.
Right.
Whereas what the right way to do it is to accept it only with logic and questions. The intellect is partial to the truth. The intellect is partial to logic. If you teach the intellect something with logic and truth, and it questions it, doubts it, but then you explain and you clarify, once that intellect has it, everything else gets pushed aside. It just does not listen to anything else. Once the intellect latches on to the correct answer, you cannot convince it that something is different. And I can give you examples, but I think you understand.
Yes.
So the three gateways to hell, we've talked about this, the kama, krodha, lobha, which is desire, anger, and greed, are all based on false beliefs of senses, being the senses, mind, body, intellect. And all of this goes away once there's proper knowledge. So the world looks different to you when you are not self-realized and the world starts to look better. And I gave this example to you once before, where I was walking down this hospital corridor and I saw this maintenance guy who used a mop, and he was an angry looking guy, didn't have anybody actually who talked nicely to him, and just looked like a very sulky, angry guy. And after I learned from Gautam that every human being, every living being has Atman in it, and you should feel the same way towards everybody, I forced myself to try to develop some feeling towards him, and I smiled. And after that, he smiled at me, and he became almost like a friend. After that, every time I would go by, because his hands were dirty, and this was before COVID or Corona, he taught me that he'd pick up his elbow and stick it, and I'd pick up my elbow as a physician and knock it. And the nurses would smile, because here I am, a physician, and he's a maintenance guy, and I'm saying hello to him as I'm going by. The nurses also started to say hello to him, and pretty soon his life changed. He started smiling, other people started interacting with him. I was watching to see what a difference something like that makes. So the knowledge happens in the buddhi, in the intellect, and the person recognizes himself as the Atman, he gains the knowledge, and you strengthen this knowledge. And once this happens, the person is free from rebirth. Sorry about taking such a long time.
No.
Have I covered everything? I hope. There's a lot of notes I've been making for myself here. Right, 16 and 17. So friends, I hope you join me next time for verses 18 and 19. I'm sorry if I rambled a little bit here.
No, it was good. It was very good. Yeah.
I'm glad, Lou. You're always good for my ego. Thank you very much for joining us, friends. Watch us on Facebook or on podcasts, and we'll see you next time.